generations of oppression, trauma, and resilience. Let's journey into the science of the soul, human genomes, and epigenetics to understand how the African gene pool not only birthed civilization, but continues to shape our healing and consciousness today. Baba Ahmose, why is the African gene pool important, and what does this truly mean for our people and our place in history?
The African gene pool is important from my perspective because it is the only gene pool. Everything else is but a variation of that. And some may say uh, that they are genetically superior to African people. But there is only one people on the planet, and those are African people. And
Yes.
we follow the line of Dinkanish, meaning thou art wonderful, who is 3.2 million years ago, an African woman, birth, civilization, humanity on the planet, and we must honor the black woman because she is, in essence, us.
Yes.
Without her, we would be nothing. And for those, if I might take a moment of personal privilege, for those who don't understand the essence of black womanhood, please step back and look. At some point, we'll talk about what you got from your mama, whether you want to admit it or not. And the point is that without the black woman, none of us would exist on this planet, even the pink Africans, as Ivan Van Sertima calls them.
Right.
Thank you, Baba. Baba, for your acknowledgement of our queenship of this world, a podium that many don't like to place us in or even acknowledge our existence. But thank you for that value this morning.
Okay. Brother, you want to?
Well, Baba, if you can, I mean, I know you say that the African gene pool is the only gene pool, but can you basically speak to the diversity of the African gene pool and basically how it relates, to all other people on the planet Earth?
You see, for me, if you begin at the Zeptepi or the time before time, you cannot have diversity without origination. And if the origination is African, all that exists post African, after African, BC, before Caucasian, then you must understand that anything that exists on this planet must seek itself within us. I sometimes wonder why some people hate their mama. Not individually, but collectively. What is it about your motherhood? What is it about your Africanness, wherever you are on the face of the planet, that you want to deny? Now, I mean, I can lay out probably some so-called scientific reasons, so-called reasons of power, capitalism, uh, but the truth is that when you wake up in the morning and you take your first breath, and when you go to sleep at night and you take your last breath, you have lived an African life. So I am concerned at times that especially I, 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 I have less of a concern about the pink Africans, but more of a concern about our melanated brothers and sisters who want to deny our Africanness. Remember what Brother Kwame Nkrumah says: "I am not African because I was born in Africa, but because Africa was born in me." So for
Right.
those who have never traveled to the continent, or those who will never travel to the continent is birthed in you.
Powerful.
In terms of our genetic makeup, if we look at us, we cannot but help see all that is in the world. I know I was kind of long-winded, but
Nah,
sometimes teachers we like to talk.
nah, that's
So I'm
We
going
like
to
to
try to
teach,
control
right?
myself.
right.
Go right
I
ahead.
love learning.
Yes,
Right.
yes,
And so
absolutely.
and what I'm hearing is the African gene pool is more than, it's not just biology, it's ancestry. From the first breath, first culture, first language,
First.
all that. So now I want to slide back to the human genome, right? That's the complete set of genetic instructions that make each of us who we are. It's made up of DNA arranged into 23 pairs of chromosomes containing around 20 to 25,000 genes. All humans are nearly identical genetically speaking. Where we like 99.9% alike. So the 1/10% difference, that's where the unique traits live. Can you break it down for the people, Baba? What is the value of understanding human genomes for African people, especially in a world where our bodies have been studied, exploited, and misunderstood?
I began 25 years ago in the year 2000. I attended a conference. I was trying to look at the name of it. I brought a flyer. It was called Higher Levels of Analysis, Progress and Promise in Research on Social and Cultural Dimensions of Health. And it was by the National Institute of Health. Now, 25 years ago, they had not completed the human genome. The human genome basically went from 1990 to 2003 when they were finally able to complete a full uh, human genomic model. Prior to that, they had done about 90%. But one of the things that stuck with me, and hopefully to answer your question, and if I go far afield, call me back because sometimes I walk down these rabbit holes, and I want to take you down there with me.
Yeah.
So in 2000, as I attended this conference on the human genome, I didn't know that much about it. I said, "Oh well, I'll go to the conference and learn something." So 25 years ago, I heard them stand and say that once we complete the human genome, we must then do a higher level of analysis. Do you hear spirit? Do you hear
Yes.
ancestors?
Yes.
Do you hear an understanding by those who we sometimes say don't understand spirituality, that they do understand it, but they just don't want us to know they understand it. And so we then ignore it and don't pay attention to it because we are our ancestors. We carry every genetic trait that our ancestors have passed on to us, and that is then modified by our environment. That is then modified by our mental capacity or incapacity if we choose not to use. What I say to people is you were given gifts by the Creator, and if you choose not to use them, then you have thrown your gifts in the trash can of life. Um, the other piece that I would say about why we have to understand the human genome and its relationship to us and our ancestral heritage is because we are the progenitors of the next generation. Our ancestors provided for us, we provide for the next generation. Unless, of course, we choose to be, now, this may sound pejorative or selfish, or because that's the word that jumps out. If we choose not to pass on the gifts that were given to us, now that doesn't mean that we necessarily, because everybody has a right to make decisions, but if we choose to keep those gifts to ourselves, who do you teach? Who do you provide that which you have learned, that which you have been taught? What do you do? Oh, I make money. Well, then use your money. Well, I am an athlete, and my people are always asking me for things. Well, if you don't want to provide for those who provided for you, give back your genes. Call your parents and tell them to come get these genes back.
That's
because
right.
you would not be great without them.
Right.
And we understand, again, to motherhood, sister, that when a mother carries a baby, there is an exchange. The mother gives the baby her DNA, but the baby also gives the mother his or her DNA.
That's right.
So therefore, when they say mama's baby, daddy's maybe, it's more than just a word. It is consubstantiation. They are of the same stuff. So every child that you have, you carry with you forever.
That's true.
Yeah.
What was that? What was the question again?
Yeah, you about so understanding human genomes for African people, you definitely letting us understand that because what to say? It's more than, it's not just about the body. It's about creation itself, and it was another part to the question. I'm gonna go back to it, but it was something you were saying. So like not just not wanting to give the gifts to pass the gifts on, not being selfish, but what if you don't recognize what the gifts are you have to be passed on?
I think, I'm sorry, I don't want to.
No, you are perfectly fine, Baba. You are our guest, and
Right.
we are in student mode.
Okay.
So we are sitting studious, listening to the wisdom and the knowledge.
I like her.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
so the question is whether we recognize where we are. We are many times at different levels of consciousness.
Yeah.
So my responsibility, I believe, is to help others when I notice that. And some people will say, well, they don't want to hear it. They don't. Well, do you love your people?
Mm-hmm.
Do you love yourself? Do you love the idea that the world that we live in can be and should be a better place? And what is your contribution to make it so? I was, I, I'll let that go. I was going to talk about this poem, that I was writing, about marching and singing, and that maybe that time has passed, that we should have classrooms rather than street
Yes.
rooms. I've done my share of marching in thinking that would bring about a change, and marching feet has a place. I think that I believe, and this is a belief, um, that we are created out of the imagination of a creator.
Mm-hmm.
And therefore, anything that we are, we reflect that creator. And our imagination, the part that we have, also comes from this creator.
Right.
Be whoever he or she may be in your belief process. I think that what we need to do is think of creative ways. All of us. It's like as a parent, sometimes you want to just tell your children the answers, but at other times you want them to learn through their own mistakes. And not that they're harmed through those mistakes, but you want them to learn, because we sometimes believe, as the white racist Benjamin Franklin says, experience keeps a deer school, but a fool will learn in no other. Not that the child is a fool, but the child just doesn't know. And some of our brothers and sisters choose not to know,
That's
because
true.
it is not to their benefit to learn. It is to their benefit to believe in, for instance, it's not part of the topic, but the slaveocracy. They believe in the slaveocracy, and that if they would but participate in this slaveocracy, that eventually it wouldn't be. But you hear them say all of the time that this person is trying to destroy the Constitution. Well, parts of the Constitution, in my opinion, need to be destroyed.
Yes, absolutely.
13th
Yeah.
Amendment, Part 2. There shall be no involuntary servitude except those who have been duly convicted.
Right.
And just in, I think it was the last election, California had on the ballot, and this is human genomics, the whole genome, all of the genes. They had on the ballot an amendment, I believe it was the last one, or it may have been the one before, to end slavery in the state of California. It was rejected by Californians. Why is that important? Because California is seen as a liberal,
Right.
whatever that
Absolutely.
means, place. And so individual states can do something about it. So when we take the human genome, we must understand, just as they understood at a higher level of analysis, that the genome exists where? In an environment. And if we are to make this a better place for all of us, then we must work with those who have chosen not to learn or have not been exposed to it. There are many things that I have not been exposed to, and each and every day I try to learn something, and I try to do better today than I did yesterday,
Right.
because whatever gifts given, gifts are expected to be used. I say that again.
Baba,
Yes, sir.
okay, now, because you had spoke of consciousness, right? And we all know that, consciousness is so important dealing with awareness. Now, as far as the genes, right, contain, our history, part of our history, our culture, basically our travels, right? So when we're talking about consciousness and awareness, right, and the knowledge of self, which is so important in the study of the gene. And I know in previous conversations you talked about how the scientists tried to find different genes, and you had also mentioned earlier about that how they know that it's something more. And speaking on the spiritual, now is there a connection between consciousness and basically what's encoded within our genes? Because a lot of times, we always speak on tapping back into our genetic memory bank.
In my opinion, the Creator would have given us all that we need, and it is up to us to either use it or, as they say, lose it. So if we have, I write about sometimes spiritual energy transfer, to just to not go a far afield. That is when one spirit is able to speak to another.
Right.
Again, to talk about my sisters. Uh, Sisters know stuff. Is that scientifically valid? Stuff. Yeah, they know stuff.
You own
Yeah.
it. You own it, Baba.
And they also are spiritually connected not only to the people that they form significant relationships with, but especially to their children. They will get a message in their spirit. I need to call my son. I need to call my daughter.
It's true.
And everything may be all right, but that spirit says touch bases.
That's
Right.
right.
And if they don't respond, you get nervous.
It's true.
And then you say, I may have to go over there. I may have to send somebody to check on them.
Yes.
And sometimes it's appropriate because there are things going on. So that spirit to spirit transfer is a higher level of analysis that we're talking about.
Yes.
And I also believe that in relationships you can practice spirit to spirit connection because we have been taught that it's not real.
Right.
We have been taught that it's hoodoo or voodoo or something, anything but what an oppressor wants us to believe. Because if you can connect spiritually, then you don't need a physical connection all the time.
That's
Because
important.
when I touch you and your spirit touches mine, then we are united and conscious, as Brother Hassan said. Yes, ma'am.
This
Oh,
is,
I'm sorry. That's your job.
Nah.
I'm going to wait my turn. Now, this is just, this is what I would say heaven on earth. Because this truth is very liberating in a society that is materialistic or physically overly conscious. And when I hear you talk about Baba, the origins of who we are is basically more spiritual than anything. I think how proud I am, and not in a sense of arrogance, but of honor, that this this origin that by which we have come from, all humanity, recognize spirituality, and that it makes me think that it's a law within itself. That is superior. That is what is superior to all other laws, when we become more spiritual than any of these other laws. And what we've learned how to do is conform to all these other ruthless laws that keep us bound. But it's only one law of liberation, and that is the spirituality that I hear, because it's more intuitive. It doesn't require, it's already built in. Diversity is already built in. All these things that we're trying to acquire is packaged in. So what they're trying to obtain, we've already done. We already are.
Right.
And so they have to continue to recreate charity or recreate ownership. These things we really don't need, because we already are. And if we could just teach that to our own people, You don't have to try to obtain something that you already are. And that is what we see in our society, is that our people are always trying to become equal or become equity or become with someone. We don't need to. We just be. We just are beings of light, or beings of, why would we not be equal?
Indeed.
So
Yes, that's right.
That's
yeah.
right. And if you
So-
can convince the people that they are less than,
Come on.
and that the only way to be more than is to be like you, as opposed to recognize self-knowledge and self-awareness. And Brother Asar is great at talking about self-knowledge.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's I just hit him.
Yeah, well, definitely answered the question for sure now about exploiting and why they like to study, why they study us a lot more than we, study ourselves. Now, so for the people who don't fully understand the process or the steps to get into a higher spiritual realm, and this might be a little bit off topic too, who knows, but could you like kind of I mean any one of you three like how to start traveling towards a higher spiritual realm?
Well, I think Baba Ahmose pretty much talked about the new solution. It's to sit,
All right.
to be taught.
Right.
Instead of marching and demanding,
Okay.
just place yourself in a place of student-led, initiatives, so that what is natural just comes natural. You just have to be retaught or learn
gotta be.
over
Right.
who you are. It goes back to Brother Kevin,
Yeah.
Brother Asar, who says knowledge of self. So here we are saying sit and learn. And maybe we need to create our own institutions of learning
There we go.
so that we can better accommodate, or at least provide the higher knowledge, and it will cancel out the lie. And it always has.
Yeah, I like to add on to that too,
Yes,
because
please.
Dr. Kim and Baba Ahmose are right on point when we're talking about teaching the right teachings, right?
Right.
Teaching our ancestral teachings,
Come
right,
on.
and really understanding the value and the power in our teaching, starting with the 10 virtues of the initiate. Start with controlling your thoughts. And also, I always like to talk about the oldest book in the world, the Book of Ptah-hotep,
Yeah.
and the instructions in that book. Where he say, teach the hearers. Teach those who have listened to the ways of the ancestors and followed the ways of the gods. So we have to have, authentic, genuine instructors who understand self-knowledge, the knowledge of self, and understand the importance of, going back and understanding our culture and our history, and teaching it in an authentic manner where it's going to benefit, the individual student and, the students as a group, group consciousness. And consciousness is so important. So, from a genetic perspective, when we go back and we look at the deep thinking of our ancestors, we know that we have that within us as well. But what has happened is, through our horrific experiences, with the Western world, coming over there, capturing us, enslaving us, and a lot of things, it was taken away from us, like our language. And those are the things that we're trying to, remember, go back and, understand exactly what it was that our ancestors laid out, that laid the whole foundation for this planet.
Right. Wonderful.
Just
Yeah.
one point I'd like to add. I think that we can either meet our elders if they are still on this plane with us, and we have a responsibility to seek them out, but they also have a responsibility to seek us out in the
That's true.
community. We can read
like that.
what they wrote and left for us. As I am in North Carolina, I always want to respond and remember an ancestor, Anna Julia Cooper.
Yes.
And if you know Anna Julia Cooper, the fourth woman to receive a doctoral degree,
Yes.
the principal of the M Street School, a graduate of St. Aug,
Yes.
who adopted children in her later years, probably younger than me now, in her later years, attended the first Pan-African Congress,
Right.
gave a speech there, and talked about uh, what is the role of motherhood in terms of teaching. So we need to call their names and we need to see their faces and not let them be ignored. And as we do that, we move toward that consciousness because they cannot take away what they struggle to overcome. People I hear on the radio or television talking about how bad things are. You don't know bad until you meet bad. It is
Right.
it is as if the enemy is winning if you have that on your consciousness. But if you understand that it is an opportunity to join together with those of like mind and overcome oppression, then you have been given the gift, whether you ask for it or not. Or you can choose to crawl into a hole, pull the cover over you, and hope things change without doing anything.
Right.
Those who can do, those who can't teach.
Right.
Right. I
Yeah,
like
beautiful. Yeah, I don't know. Everything ties back together, so it wasn't off subject. Not
Oh no.
not much at all. But I want to continue on into the epigenetics, and which is the study of how our environment and experiences can actually change the way our genes are expressed, without altering the DNA sequence itself. What our ancestors endured, the enslavement, the racism, the trauma, didn't just vanish with time. Science now confirms what our elders always said. The pain travels through the bloodline. Epigenetics, that shows us that stress, discrimination, and environmental pressures can turn genes on or off, impacting health, emotion, and even behavior across generations. So, Baba Utmost,
I'm sorry. I'm just
can you?
having I'm in my own zone over here,
Yeah,
and oh, this is so good, and thank you all so much.
wonderful. Right.
Well,
Well,
I know you're going to Baba, and I'm coming to Baba too.
yeah.
But let
Yeah.
me tell you
Go
something.
for it.
This is powerful.
Yeah.
And I'm more of the public policy person and the statistics.
Mm.
But, recently, Wake County, Margaret Wake of Wake County, the slave owner, they just did a study on infant mortality. And black populations have the highest in the 27610 Southeast Raleigh area. And one of the things that they've ruled out is that we didn't have a problem eating. I believe that. But our other issues could be something that is passed on. So when I hear passed on that has nothing to do with, physical eating or any of those elements. But now that I hear you talk about how it travels through the bloodline,
Right.
the trauma that they have yet decided how to handle. This tells us how the environment, like you said, and the epigenetics plays a huge role. And no matter what we discover, what ways will society begin to heal what they've traumatized? But go ahead. Sorry. Bye-bye.
Well said. The epigenetic intergenerational transfer of trauma. Um, if we begin at the beginning of time, we would not have had that. But we must look at the Ma'afa.
Mm-hmm.
What's that other word, brother?
Same question.
Ma'angamizi,
Right. We must,
intentional and deliberate destruction of black life and black civilization.
that's right. You see, and we must look at that and say that there has been an intergenerational transfer because what mediates that trauma is a need fulfilling environment, whatever that looks like. And we have not had a need fulfilling environment in my lifetime, in my parents' lifetime, in my grandparents' lifetime, except what they create for themselves. Let us not ignore those spaces that they have created where they feel fulfilled. As a young man, one time, my mama took me to an all night prayer meeting, because I was obedient. I went. See, y'all thought I was
Yeah.
I went,
I,
and
I've
she
been to those, Baba.
she promised me at the all night prayer meeting that I would be introduced to some people, and those people didn't come, and they shall remain nameless. And uh, but the point was, this was a space where our mothers primarily,
Yes.
because there weren't many men there, our mothers would get together and touch the hand of their creator and say, save our children, save our families, heal that which is uh, sick, heal that which is broken. So there are some spaces, even in the midst of this traumatic world that we live in, spaces that we created, like when a mother lifts her baby and holds it in her arms and kiss its face. She is creating a space of healing, a space of healing when an individual that doesn't have to creates a program to take care of black children, a space here and a space there that exists. But in spite of that, the trauma persists because the oppressor's objective is to traumatize those who would be the essence of creation. They wish us not to believe that we are the very manifestation of the creator on the planet. Because somewhere I heard, in his image he created them.
Mm-hmm.
And if in his image he created them, and that image is found first in Eastern Africa, then what is the image of our creator? There is someone by the name of Garvey who said that God is black. And before that, there was somebody else, Henry McNeil Turner, who said God is a Negro. And so if we read those words and we understand that we are but a reflection of our creator, then if we are a reflection of our creator, if we are the created of our creator, then no one or nothing can dissuade us from accomplishing that which we are put on this planet
Come
to
on.
accomplish.
Come on.
I'm just saying.
He said it well. So,
I,
yeah.
I had to reflect, Baba. Get me off of here right quick, because I'm just going to take out running like the old folks used to say. I grew up in those same arenas where my mothers and my aunts called on the creator, and I mean called him like he could not be reached, not whisper like a Catholic church. And no, they called him because we were always in crisis. And if you're always in crisis, you don't get a chance to create. It's when you understand who you are. And it reminds me of George Washington Carver, if I can speak lightly, of a man who created over 200 ways to take the earth and transition it into creativity. Once you say, I'm not a slave, but I am of the creator, then you then produce creativity. But if you are in a crisis or always under an oppressive regime and thought of in the form of the lie, you don't get a chance to isolate yourself into a proper place mentally to deliver what the creator has given unto you. So this is very liberating to say why safe spaces are important. We must fight for our space so that our children can think and respond, not react, because reactionary behaviors is beast-like, and that is what we see from the other side. This beast-like behavior, that is truly not our nature. So it's taking us back to our truest form of humanity.
If I may, because I'm sitting here thinking about epigenetics and basically the way it's passed down through the genes
Yes.
of the mother, and I'm thinking about some of the things that they did to psychologically destroy us by making the women watch their husbands beat to death or tied to two horses, running other directions, or watch their, sons, traumatic things happen to their sons and daughters, right? And that's a trauma that's passed down. And I think, Baba, he kind of, touched on the healing part of it, when the mother's holding the baby and, nurturing her child. But the question I have, for Baba Ahmose is, okay, because a lot of times when we talk about epigenetics, we're thinking of it as far as the bad traits that are passed down as far as trauma, right? But when we talk about the knowledge of self, we're talking about traveling back to the motherland. So the question is, from a positive perspective of epigenetics, is tapping into our original knowledge, the knowledge of self, our history and our culture. How do we connect that to the mother, Baba?
That's a great question. Epigenetics itself means beyond the genes or over the genes.
Okay.
And so when we come with issues, how do we overcome? How do we cross over from pain to pleasure, from hurt to help? That is done not only through a reconnection with our ancestral home, whether we go there or not. I've been to Africa about 16, 17 times. But it wasn't necessary for me to go there before I began to study and began to listen and began to see the manifestation of wellness in my children, to see the manifestation of wellness in my parents, to see the manifestation of wellness around me, even though the oppressor was in place. I take the idea that if the Creator gave us genetically and physiologically the ability to transmit trauma, he or she also gave us an opportunity to be well.
Yes.
Because you would not get isfit without ma'at.
Right.
There is a balance. And then there's choice in that. That is the humanity part of us. We have a choice whether to follow isfit, the negative, or ma'at, the positive. I am currently in the midst of writing something having to do, this is not your question, but I'll take this opportunity to say it. Writing something that had to do with intergenerational trauma transfer among the oppressor. For you see, if you believe that you can oppress generations after generations and that not affect your children, you are in a delusion.
That's right.
Because that trauma also affects your children.
That's
now
right.
the question becomes, if you've chosen to turn your back on your Creator, does the Creator also give you that healing that he gave his very progeny? And I won't say that you can't get it. I am saying that you have chosen to be isfit rather than ma'at.
Wow.
So, human genomes and epigenetics. What can you make a connection between them two?
The human genomics is all of the genes in the human body, and epigenetics talks about above that. What do we do? What, are we talking about the environment? Are we talking about what you eat, what you wear, what you believe? Are you talking about the other pieces that have as much to do with genetics as the genetics themselves? Because we are not strictly physiological.
That's right.
Now, I think when they chose the term epigenetics or neural epigenetics, that they forgot about that conference I talked about in 2000 when they said a higher, wherever that is, a higher understanding. Because if we just look at genetics, we're talking about, and I'll use this analogy, I don't know how great it is, we talk about the engine of a car. If you learn all of the parts of the car and you can put the car together, it will sit there until you provide what?
The engine.
You provide something to the engine, some gas.
Okay.
So what's the gas for the human body? What's the energizer for the human body?
Yeah.
Now let's talk about the mitochondria. Every cell contains, I'll go back for just a second. Every cell in the human body contains the mitochondria. The mitochondria is the energy producing part of the cell. So why do you think when they were putting the human genome together that it was the National Institute of Health and the Department of Energy?
Oh,
See,
wow.
I'm going down
Oh,
this rabbit hole.
wow.
Y'all come on and go with
I'm
me.
with you, Baba. I'm with
You
you.
with me?
I'm on the train.
So
Ooh.
if the Department of Energy is interested in genomics,
Come on.
and they're interested in the mitochondria, which is the energy producing part of the cell,
Oh, Jesus.
what is the purpose of that energy if you can harness it? I saw something saying at rest we can light up a 100-watt light bulb, and that it increases with stress. Da 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 da.
Yeah.
Now I'm not saying that what they did in the Matrix was the future, but I'm not saying it isn't either.
That's
right,
correct.
right.
So understand, we study human genomics not only to understand the so-called science, but we also understand that when things such as genomics and understanding their relationship to life are under control of people who don't have your best interests at heart,
That's right.
that you better pay attention.
That's
You
right.
better pay attention to the fact that one of the Nobel Prize winners for the double helix, which is a strand of DNA, is also a racist. They disavowed him, but he was integral in putting together information on, the bell curve kind of stuff,
That's right.
saying that Africans are less intelligent than Eurasians, et cetera, et cetera. So if you have a person like that involved in this, then you need to at least pay attention. And I'm not saying that they didn't put him out of the club, but at the same time, he was in the club.
I have a question, right? Because I remember, when I was a member of the Nation of Islam, and the studies of Yaqub which was the study of genetics, right? And basically, what they said was that the black gene was the dominant gene, and that the white gene was the recessive gene, and it took a 600-year period for the genes to go from black to recessive to light genes, right? And basically what he would do was, they would kill off the dark-skinned babies and keep the light-skinned babies. They called it the grafting process, and they just kept doing that until, the white man came into existence. So, Baba, my question is, what makes the black gene dominant, and what makes the white gene recessive?
Well, what's dominant and recessive, and here we're talking about phenotypes. We're talking about skin. We're talking about eye color. When a dominant meets a recessive, the dominant becomes the genetic makeup. There are people who historically have believed in being able to design, designer babies. For instance, we know science has been able to take skin and create an embryo
That's true.
without the presence of mother or father. They just take the skin, but they said it wasn't viable, so it wasn't kept alive. But they've also been able to manipulate a woman's embryo who they believed had some form of illness by taking some material from a healthy embryo and implanted it in this third one. So there were 3 parents to this child. Understand that science has been able to manipulate, following the idea of Yaqub, have been able to manipulate genetics, but also people have. Understand that there are people who want light-skinned folk in their family. Understand that in our community, we'll tell the truth here, in our community, folks said, oh, that's going to be a pretty baby. Look at his mama and daddy. One African and one pink African.
Right.
You know, so we have done that. What's he gonna look like? Look at his ears. We all know those stories,
His knuckles.
and so we've known families that preferred that their children and grandchildren be lighter, and they treated them better. You know,
Yes.
I mean, we even know the story of Malcolm. You know, and Malcolm's mother and father. If we read the autobiography of Malcolm X, he talks about it. So this is not new. There's also the whole idea of deciding that certain people are not worthy to live. You know, we know
That's true.
that in parts of Africa right now, that some people mislabeled Palestine. There's some Europeans who have decided that some darker people are not worthy to live on the planet, and they have killed 70 plus thousands of them. Uh, and some people have not said a mumbling word because they don't have permission to say it. But let me say this, not only are the killed traumatized, but the killers are traumatized.
Okay, speak on it. Speak on it.
Now,
And
Bob.
Baba.
those, yes, sir.
No, go ahead on.
And in terms of dominant and recessive, uh, understand that in this country, when I was born in 1948 in Virginia, the doctors had a right without permission to terminate babies because the parents were too poor or had too many children. So I sit here out of luck as much as anything else because this country has been the purveyor of that kind of racist genocide around the world. They have been the leaders,
That's right.
and they have pretended that that's not true. So I think that choosing who to live and who to die, and basing it on phenotype or looking for certain genetic material. This is another reason we need to pay attention to genomics, because if we find that there is a BRCA gene, which is a gene for breast cancer, this is breast cancer month. If we find that there's a warrior gene, then we can say that black boys have a tendency to be more aggressive. And they have found what they call these genes. If we find an athletic gene, we can then say this child should be funneled into the athletic community and given the resources, because then they become a viable product of the owners. So genetics is really important even for amateurs. I am not a geneticist, I'm not a scientist. I just read some of the things that they write, and it worries me that we are not paying attention. We're paying more attention to who's going to win on Saturday and who's going to lose on Sunday than we're paying to scientists sitting around choosing to be manipulators of the population.
Baba, yes, because and I want the listening audience to know that Baba Ahmose, that's my grandmaster teacher, my Jagna. He's been, helped guide me along in the whole community for the last 6.5 years. And one question I want to ask you, Baba, because I remember asking you a few years ago about eugenics, and you broke some things down to me. But then that's when I first heard about human genomes, and you spoke to me about human genomes and to get an understanding of human genomes. But before that study of human genomes, there was eugenics. Could you share with us the practice of eugenics and what their goal and objective were?
Eugenics is about manipulating the population so that you have what you consider the perfect person or the perfect group of people. That has been used with us in breeding farms. During the time of our captivity, when they stopped them from importing our ancestors, they set up breeding farms, and they would breed the strong with the strong. Eugenics was practiced when they captured us. We were taken from the continent as the very best of the best. It's
Right.
no wonder that we're able to survive. We were the very best of the best.
Mm-hmm.
And now they've tried to teach our African brothers and sisters how bad we are through their movies and radio and television and music. And many of them fall for it, and many of us fall for
Oh
it
yeah.
as well,
Yeah.
because uh, as we know, the objective is to always keep us separate and apart. So, but eugenics in before there was Germany or Belgium, we must not forget about Leopold. And if we talk about brother Saw has mentioned this, that we always want to run to Nazi. Well, what about Leopold and 20 million Africans
on.
killed simply because he wanted to make a dollar? And he also wrote a letter, I didn't bring it with me, where he told them how to keep them separate and to teach them that they were heathens and that they had no belief until he brought the Bible. So the whole idea of choosing what a group of people should look like or whether they should exist on the planet also began here. And in fact, the Supreme Court Justice once wrote that it was better to exterminate, I believe he said, I'm not sure that's the word, a person than allow them to grow up feeble-minded. So this country has been a leader, a world leader in many things, including that.
Yeah.
Baba, could I preference this question to a statement that you made about how the adversary, and I really don't want to use those terms, but those who specifically know what the power of the human genome presents, when we start seeing them navigate their consciousness or lack thereof through agencies such as the NIH, you can sort of map what they are thinking when it comes to now this, when this does settle, we'll start seeing these belief systems come into our classrooms, come into our institutions of learning, come into and then it affects what is projected as education, which is now a belief system on a whole nother level, because now it expects you to conform to this knowledge, even if it's the miseducation. Would this not be a violation of humanity when you specifically know, but you specifically use tactics to derail certain citizens from understanding just for you to keep the dominance?
Well, sister, I hate to be a bearer of bad news, but you must be human in order. Well, you're human. You must have humanity in order to treat other humans humanly. And if you choose, if you choose that there are precedents over humanity, then it is not a problem for you to destroy those who are not useful to you. That is what we do many times. I'm a Vietnam vet. They tried to destroy the country. After Dien Bien Phu, when the French were kicked out and the other Europeans said, oh no, this can't happen, and the invasion, they wanted to win by what they called attrition. They wanted to destroy the very life force of that part of the world. And look at Nagasaki and Hiroshima.
Right.
What did they want to do? Kill everything. We kill everything that moves. I was talking to a brother who was in the run up to Baghdad, and he talked about whenever they saw something that moved, they killed everything. They ran over men, women, children, and had no recourse about it. Before the current administration got in place, I was having a conversation about, well, if they decide to use the military, and people were saying, well, the soldiers believe in this democracy. They will not obey those orders. I said, soldiers are stupid, by and large. I'm sorry, simplify, brother.
Indeed.
by and large, and the ones who are not are children. That's why they recruit children, so that they can tell them, train them, condition them
That's
to
good.
do what is being done. These people who are in the community are right now running over folk, and let me make it plain, they're either ignorant or they have been so conditioned that they don't see themselves doing anything wrong. In fact, they reframe the world, change the picture in their head so that what they do is right. It is an understanding, again, back to your question about the humanity. You must be, in my opinion, human in your essence to not do inhuman things. It is difficult for some people to kill. I'll tell you a quick story. I mean, I won't take too long. I'm gonna tell you this quick story. I was in Philadelphia before going to Vietnam, and I was in the subway, waiting on the train, and there was a Marine sit in the subway, and as brothers get to talk in the old days, and he told me this. He said, when I killed my first man, it gave me such a charge that I cannot wait to do it again. There are killers, and there are killers.
Can I speak to that, Baba?
Yes, sir. You're an expert on them Marines.
I was going to take off my headset.
'cause
I
you
was
know-
going to take my headphones off because this is just too real. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was a Marine.
Yes,
right?
you were.
And I understand where that mentality comes from, right? The mentality is in the teaching and the training, in the constant training, and the constant reminding that, the Marines, each Marine is expendable because, they're the first to go and the last to leave, right? So they supposed to be some type of super Marines, right? And so, they teach you things like one shot, one kill, right? So you'll be a expert, right? And not waste your bullets, right? So your whole training and conditioning of the mind is to kill, kill, kill. And unfortunately, you just can't turn that off like that because of the conditioning and the programming. And all of this is also dealing with genes because genes is also dealing with environment and characteristics, right? And so when we understand, the way the brain works and the mind works as far as, neurochemistry, neuroplasticity, and the way the mind operates, if you keep, saying the same thing, it's going to leave a deeper impression within the mind. And that's what happened with the brother with killing. Because like you say, the psychological charge that he got had been embedded in him through teaching and through training, and also a survival mechanism, right? So it's a lot of harm that's done. And I think another thing basically that we need to look at, as we talk about, mental health and genes is what, we talked about a few weeks ago, the American Psychological Association.
That's right.
And how they admitted to intentionally and deliberately, misdiagnosing and also causing mental health illnesses and diseases for African Americans, right? Because the genes are affected by the environment. And if it's a bad psychological environment, that's a lot of trauma that has to be overcome.
Yeah. Well, that brings me right on to the next question from a medical and mental health standpoint. How has epigenetics played a role in the disparities between African Americans and white Americans?
Baba?
Well, when we look at epigenetics and we look at the human genome, one of the things that we need to be cognizant of, we must be aware that there is a continual search for things like violence gene. Now you connect that with what happened in Illinois, when they passed a law saying that they could test children
Uh-huh.
from what, third
Third
to
grade.
Third grade.
12th grade
Yeah.
for mental health issues. The other piece is we don't know, I don't know, some of you may know out there, what happens to our blood when it's taken.
Mm-hmm.
How many tests are performed on it? When I was younger, we knew that, once you were in the military, they had a database with your fingerprints, et cetera, et cetera. But I'm sure that they also have a DNA database,
They do.
and that they are testing us for whatever they find. There are certain health tests that you can take with your DNA that will give you the possibility of you contracting certain kinds of diseases. But they also have mental health uh, that they call mental health tests. They also have the impact of certain so-called mental health drugs on you, what they call side effects, and things that will maybe lead to suicide, et cetera, et cetera. They also have in the healthcare field an understanding of uh, the value of doing the research to determine whether there is a specific gene for a specific problem. There's also gene manipulation. Uh, Genes can be manipulated very early on in before the baby's born, or then what kind of drugs will impact uh, you in the African community. There is sometimes a misunderstanding of, for instance, blood pressure. What's a normal blood pressure for black people, Africans, and what's a normal blood pressure for Eurasians?
Right.
And so your doctor may be an excellent physician, but he or she may believe that there is a difference, that your blood pressure should be over 130 and theirs 120. And so by the time your 130 becomes 140 or 150, then there are medications that they can give you, and that there are some medications that are not good for us.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And because we trust the medical field, we trust our doctors, we trust the educational system that train these doctors, we end up on, as they would say in the old days, the short end of the stick. you know, uh, for those who too young to understand, that means we're in bad shape.
Right.
You know? So genomics will provide a foundation, a justification for not only evaluation but treatment.
It's true.
Mm-hmm.
Right. It's powerful that you said that, and if we brought these things current. Ironically, about 3 days ago, I received a call from my granddaughter's school, a public school, Southeast Raleigh Elementary, and the psychiatrist. Yes, the psychiatrist called me because they are now issuing within the last 3 years a screening that they do for our children on psychological behaviors, and they are trying to quote unquote, I guess, eliminate or at least detect, so they say, any early trauma or anything that could be evading or preventing that child from learning certain concepts that they should know at certain age groups. And I think I asked this man so many questions, he almost felt bad that because I checked no on the paper because it was so vague. He called me and said, Miss Mukhtarian, we just want to make sure you check no. Are you sure you don't want the screening done? Now, I've never been asked that in all my 51 years. Are you sure you meant no? If I said no, I meant no. Now, granted, I said no because I really didn't understand a lot of what, and I don't trust the system.
Mm-hmm.
But I asked him to explain it to me. And he gave me his reasoning, and I began to ask him, you're going to look at these things from this perspective. Is there any way we can look at it from other perspectives? Because, of course, the system or their system always conduct things that benefit them, their screenings, their, how they get information to benefit their system. And I think when I hear Baba Ahmose say, we are trusting of those systems, we are, because we don't have those who are in our, who should be being, objective, or even they question nothing. They just say this is the format you should learn by, and we don't. I want to use the word buck, but we certainly don't challenge based off the needs of African Americans. And if I'm not mistaken, Brother Asar, if you recall, we even talked about that with the medical society, about what is good for us may not be good for, as a teacher. I know that in the African American female, they say we lack vitamin D, which means we need more sunlight. Well, when they tell us to take the children out, it's only for 30 minutes. Well, I would buffer to say our children need more sunlight than natural, because we came from a climate that had more. So these things are, it sounds, maybe, I don't want to say petty, but these are necessary for our quality of life. Brother Baba Ahmose, what do you say towards how important it is for us to study and understand who we are, so that we can advocate better for quality of life?
Well, I think that's essential. As I was listening to you talk about it, I was thinking about a conversation I had with Brother Asar around the pineal gland and the idea of the circadian rhythm. One of the things that we've known for many generations probably is that teenagers tend to have a different circadian rhythm. But in the educational system, we don't adjust school for them, or even in college, we don't adjust school for them. What we do is make them adjust to us. So we are in conflict with what's happening with them genetically, with their system. The other thing is when we are confronted by systems that have made decisions about what they need to do in terms of collecting data, the question becomes, what do you do with the data?
Right.
You can tell me it's so you can teach better,
Right.
but I've lived long enough to, through social adjustment, twilight schools, where they separated people based on what they perceived of as their ability to learn or their ability to do something else. Even though we have ADA, Americans with Disabilities Act, saying that we can't ask certain questions, we can't mistreat you. Those are things that are so-called legal. The truth is that many times people are mistreated. I was looking in my notes for something that had to do with, we have liquor stores everywhere. Now we have cannabis shops everywhere. And this study said our findings reveal that using high potency cannabis alters DNA methylation, particularly in genes related to energy and immune system functions. This was true for participants who used high potency cannabis. So the idea is, I want you to continue to get high, and I'm going to alter your DNA, and this part of the DNA is what responds to epigenetic trauma. And so it is no wonder many times that we see young people in our community acting a certain way. And it is, in my opinion, planned. There's a new drug, it's not new, that they're planning to make available to veterans called MDMA. Or is it MAMD?
MDMA.
Yeah, and it is called, in the community, what do they call it? The date rape drug.
The date rate drug?
The date rape drug. And they're saying it's safe to use for PTSD.
The state of North Carolina is trying to pass that from a former vet.
Yeah, well, I think that we need to keep in mind, too, when we're talking about PTSD and medicines and things of that nature, and that is the admission from the American Psychological Association, right? And I think the whole medical field,
Right.
we have to be very careful, in who we choose, basically, to be a patient, to, because, the intentional and deliberate destruction, of the black mind is obvious, as we state, every week. And I just think, sitting here, listening to Dr. Kim talk about, her granddaughter, about a year and a half ago, I had to go to that same school. And I think I spoke on this before, and how it was like 4 African Americans in there, and they were just attacking my grandson, right? Because they wanted to send him to a therapist. Because, the Department of Education, the school systems, they get extra money for, Title I students, or students who have, some kind of, IEP,
Yes.
or some type of, what they consider to be behavior problem. And like, the school that she's talking about, Southeast Elementary School, right, it's mostly black students. So a lot of times what they'll do is they'll target these black schools and target our students and destroy, try to destroy their minds. And fortunately, Dr. Kim's granddaughter has Dr. Kim. And fortunately, my grandson has me
You, yes.
and his mother. But the unfortunate part is, a lot of our brothers and sisters don't have representation, someone to advocate for them, to let them know about the harms of what's taking place in the intentional and deliberate, destruction of the black child and the black mind, especially the black boys. Because the last thing they want is for the black boys to grow up to be strong, functional black men, understanding their responsibility. And I just think that that's something for us to really take a look at, and that is that we really can't put too much, trust in, these wicked scientists, basically, that's working on human genomes and things of that nature. As Baba Ahmose had spoke on earlier, as far as the energy producing part of the cell, right? And are they trying to harness that energy and use it for energy? All of these things are important. And, that's why I'm glad that, we have a chance, to come on Sunday mornings and share with our brothers and sisters some of these important issues so that we can be more conscious.
Right.
It's powerful. That's powerful. And Brother Asar, when you talk about even Baba saying these undercurrent initiatives to undermine our genome itself, we talk about how powerful it is, but the mad scientist, and I call him mad not because he not only is he angry, but he's mentally out of control, or intimidated, or so fearful. And I usually say, I don't use the word superior, I say inferior, because they are constantly in fear, and they've created a system that constantly tries to undermine and keep everyone else in fear or second class. And if we don't recognize it, we'll get a degree in that mentality. We'll actually go to their schools to learn how to keep our own selves oppressed. And that in itself is a mental illness. So while we're trying to undo, and what we'll be doing is actually defeating domestic terrorism. Because this is a form of economic education, and whatever we want to say, terrorism, whatever you want to say, is a form of terrorism and imperialism. And we have some nice cute words like racism and isms, but at the end of the day, it's a bunch of terrorists who are in fear, who have to project this on others first before you find out who you really are. It sounds like to me the goal is a warrior, this warfare that says we better get you before you get us. But we don't want to get you with our knowledge. We want to be inclusive with our knowledge, because it does us no good for humanity not to know the truth.
Right. And they keep us occupied, like y'all said, trying to find out who gonna win Saturday and who gonna lose on Sundays. Right. So
true.
Yeah. So but we know that trauma can be inherited, as well as strength and power can be inherited, right? And this might be kind of redundant, but how can we use this knowledge to to reclaim our education, spirituality, just reclaim ourselves?
It's good.
I think uh, I think the first thing is to recognize intergenerational transfer of trauma, also to recognize the constant ongoing trauma events. So the first thing is communication.
Okay.
Do we know what traumatic events, for instance, you talked about the children in the school. Do we know what our children are facing in those closed environments, whether they be schools or clubs or whatever?
Right.
Do we know what kind of life they're living in their homes? And I'm not saying that we need to knock down the door and find out what's going on, but when children are traumatized, they become traumatized adults. When adults are traumatized, they continue to act on that trauma until we can provide a safe space. First, I began with an understanding that all mothers are sacred, all women are sacred, and they need a need fulfilling environment so that they don't have to suffer the consequences of the trauma. I don't believe any African on this planet has not either suffered trauma or viewed trauma, because the traumatizers are everywhere.
Yes.
The traumatizers are like insect, you know, that they go everywhere and cause dissension and trouble almost everywhere. They have gotten into religion. I mean, they teach you that the only way to be, well, I'm not going to do that. They gotten into religion.
Well-
I saw you coming over across the sliding in the lane,
Yes,
brother.
ma'am. I just
Yeah.
did. They've gotten into education, and that, I mean, just for instance, we know, according to the traumatizer, the only proper education is the one that they give you. That, for instance, our HBCUs, I've spent all my life working in HBCUs, graduated from HBCUs. So when folk tell me what an HBCU is, I walk that walk, and I can talk that talk. So what we do is we turn water into wine. What you do is you try not to ruin the child when you get it. See, I can take a child, a young person, I call them children, because I'm old. You know, you get to say stuff when you're old, and I may say some stuff before I leave here that you wish I didn't say.
No.
But you know, with we used to say, with age comes wisdom, but with age comes recklessness too. So anyway, the point is
My grandmother.
that, I mean, many of us have evaluated education and said that that education is only valid if it's given by our oppressor. That we then release the value of, for instance, the HBCU, and see it as second. But that's what folk are trying to teach us to do. For without the HBCU, even Clarence Thomas. Let me say something good about Clarence. Even Clarence Thomas said in the Fordyce or Ayers decision that it was necessary to have HBCUs. Now he probably changed his mind by now, but I just, every now and then you got to see saints and devils for who they are. And I'm not saying which is which. I would never call anybody anything
I will.
in public.
Yes. In public.
In public.
I will in public.
Yeah, you will. I like that. So my point is this: being aware of the manifestation of the trauma allows us intervention. Now, that doesn't mean that you have to use the instruments that test other people to test your child. It simply means you have to listen, because they will tell you about their trauma. They will tell you whether or not life is good for them. And some people will say, well, I'm not trying to teach my child to have a good life. Well, that's your problem. That's not mine. My problem is that every time my child left the home, especially as teenagers, my concern was whether they'd come back. And that's because they live in a hostile world. And that is not something that you can explain to other people who are not us,
Right.
because we all know it.
Yeah.
We all know it. We all know it when we see the lights and we hear the siren. We all know that we
Sure.
are at risk. That's part of our trauma.
That's part
Yeah.
of
You
the
say, I don't have any trauma. Yes, you do.
Yeah.
Yes, you
Every
do.
time they ride up next to you,
That's
your
true.
trauma kicks in. It manifests itself. And you say to yourself, is this survival time or not?
It's true. And who
And,
are, that's good.
go ahead, ma'am.
No, Baba. I'm over here. I feel like I want to pass out, but I gotta let Brother Asar know so he can catch me. I can't fall on the elder. I got to fall on the younger man. Listen, this is so liberating because I have sons. You know, I talked about
Yeah.
it. But every time they walk out the door, I have to think, are they going to return? Or what state will they be in when they return? That is constant. It's a microaggression in a society that says they are free, a free market or a free home of the free and home of the brave. But no, we are home of the terrorized and tyranny. And when do we, often, even in education comes application and interpretation. And what I do know is that while we are so, it's almost that they've taught us not just to educate, what education to know, but how to address them. So when I see a police officer like Baba, I'm gonna say, I don't see a man with a uniform. I see a man who represents a very covered other organization. I don't get the chance to feel like, oh, I'm 100% safe, and my mind goes into a whole nother thinking pattern. Yet we are taught to continue to call them cops. Last year, we saw them bring up a judge who had on a Confederate costume. We've seen that with other judges in the state of North Carolina with Confederate costumes. Yet, no matter what they believe and institute from the bench, we still have to reverence them as the honorable. And that is psychologically oppressive. And that changes, I wonder how much that changes the gene pool when you're forced to swallow. Or somebody just got killed and they have made him a Christian and a whole idol.
Yes.
How does that impact the very DNA structure of what it means to be healthy? Psychologically, if we have to eat that, we will not be healthy. Baba.
We must resist.
Must resist.
We must resist, and resistance takes many forms. I know there was a program where y'all talked about resistance, a great program. I take this position. If they put somebody's face on a coin or a bill, then that money is automatically required to be donated to the black community for our liberation.
Yes.
I want a face on $1 or $10 or $50 or whatever. Never going to spend it in any other way than to give and help our people. And let me see you switch and turn over anyway, I shouldn't say that. I believe that we have been in short-term misery. Let me say this. I mean, even the idea of the police is African. The history of the police must go back to Kemet. But I also believe that we have only been in this Ma'afa for a few hundred years. But for thousands of years, we have not. So that says to me, if we go back to the time before time, we can see a way out of no way.
Yes.
It also says to me that we must exist in this space, and we must exist unified in this space. I lived long enough when there were only a couple people in Congress that looked like us.
Right.
And we prayed for the day. We walked for the day. We held our hands for the day when we would have hundreds. Now we have about, 100 and whatever, and all they do, that's not quite correct. Every year they have a party. That's the big event. I want to know from them always is, why don't you stand and deliver? You let other people with smaller numbers wrecked the whole system, and you have done nothing because nothing is wrong. You have done very little to move the agenda. And we put you back each and every year
Yes.
because when you come to our community, you say, well, I did this for you, I did that, and I'll be back next time I run, you know. And we understand now from you that that system is not in our best interest.
Not at all.
We are part of a slaveocracy. The slaveocracy continues. That it is up to us, not you, to make the changes necessary. And whether that is resistant testing, whether that is fighting for clarity and truth, whether that is rearing young people so that they know themselves. However, there's a word that I like called equifinality.
Right.
And equifinality means that you can get to the same place by many different paths. And so there is not just my way or your way, it's our way. And we are all on the highway to better.
Yes. That's good.
So
That's a positive for me
Yes.
okay.
because we are the very best of the best. We were taken as the best of the best. And we have survived the worst of the worst. So there, what you gonna do now?
So
For those of you who are listening.
yeah. So
We're listening.
with you know, we've had apologies from APAs. We've had memorandum 46s, Draketomanias and whatever else Cartwright wrote out there. How do we start protecting our, you know, you was just talking on it briefly though. And a quick story. I had my grandson, he was at Duke Hospital. He was in there for about a week, and they keep telling my daughter, they don't know what's wrong. They don't know what's wrong, but they won't let him out of there. Every day they taking blood. And I'm like, look, let's just take him and let's just go. But they wouldn't let him out there till his fever came down. What I'm trying to get to is how do we start protecting ourselves from these type of studies? You know, from them studying and you know, whatever else throughout genes or DNA, whatever. It's hard. That's a hard one to say.
What? Oh, how do we protect ourselves?
Yeah, where we
Well, I
start
think-
at from protecting ourselves.
Well, I think
We
really,
know resistance.
you know, we got a long way to go, to be honest, right? Because we have to protect ourselves on so many different levels, right? As far as studies are concerned, you know, that's why, you know, we had programs like this podcast to share information as
Right.
far as, you know, what the so-called scientists are doing, right? And also, you know, all of this is connected when you talk about the education, you talk about the mental health, you talk about, you know, the physical health, you talk about environment, and you talk about all of these different things, you know, that affect our genes and affect our characteristics. The way that we protect ourselves is through the knowledge of self,
Just keep
right?
on studying,
Through
yeah.
addressing history, but it's more than just having the knowledge of self, because you know, a lot of us have knowledge of self, but we have to have a plan as far a plan of action of what we have to do as a people, right? And basically, you know, that's why we try to, you know, like Kwame Ture said, the job and responsibility of the conscious is to try to help, you know, educate the unconscious or help them be aware of their unconscious behavior, right? So protection always starts with the knowledge, right, of what we know, the knowledge of self, who we are. Also, you know, getting with like-minded people and building, and not basically just giving in to a system that's corrupt and does not have our best interests at heart. Unfortunately, genetically, you know, it has affected us where a lot of times we get to the point where we want to imitate and mimic our oppressor, right? Because we don't study enough to really understand why we are in the position that we are in today. So to me, protection always starts with knowledge, and the knowledge of self, which is the basis of all true knowledge. And also to be, honest and fair about the whole thing of protecting ourselves. That's been one of the most difficult things for us to do as a people,
I
right?
agree.
And it's still going on today in Africa. So we have to, you know, we have to face these challenges. Even though a lot of the challenges are old, some of them are new, right? Because they're continuing to try to, study us and keep their foot on our neck. Because one thing that they know genetically, they know what we're made of, genetics, right? One of the things basically that we really haven't spoken on up to this point is melanin, right? And the value and importance of melanin and how melanin is made up of different genes with different functions, right? And as black people, African people, we have the highest concentration of melanin within us. The Europeans have melanin too, but not as much as us. I know that that's part of the reason why they say they have a recessive gene and we have a dominant gene, because we have a high concentration of melanin that has a whole lot of different properties within us that give us, vision, give us skin color, hair color, give us the ability to basically move the way we move genetically. When we hear drums and things of that, even the dream state, right, which is dealing with a higher level of consciousness once we become spiritual aware. So I think that, when we're talking about what we have to do to protect ourselves is, one, we have to know who we are, we have to know who the enemy is, and we have to know our environment, as Sun Tzu said, of China.
Right. That's something very imperative that's been said. Communication is key, especially in the home with your children. And
That's powerful.
I know that I heard that a few times. That's really key. So
Can I say something very quickly? The spirit is working because I was just thinking of Sun Tzu. That's all.
Wow.
Yeah, right. And also healing should be holistic too. I'm hearing that, right?
Yes.
Right. So
Brother Essence, may I also say, in combination, when I hear Brother Asar talk about the protection aspect, I think protection is holistic. It is spirit, soul, and body. So
Right.
when we talk about protection, we're covering all bases. And the start is to know thyself. So this is a very powerful projection as to who we are today.
Yes.
To even talk about the epigenetics and that humanity came from Africa. And I think so many times, one thing, if nothing else, we see why the knowledge of self, or and I won't say theory because it's not a theory, it's a fact of the original man coming from Africa is so fought. If you don't know nothing else, you know how our enemies went the extra mile of climbing up a pyramid to cut off the noses. Like, I don't want to climb on my roof, let alone climb as far as they did to have to cut the nose off, so that we could lose the physical imagery. For generations, these, of course, for centuries, these statues and whatever buildings have been in society for ages. But look at what great lengths of the lies that are intermingled just to keep the people. And that enough, for me, is enough to seek as to why. And I hope for the listening audience, I hope that you are compelled to go seek out truth for what it is and learn and appreciate so that you can shed the lies. And I believe that in itself will begin the protection layer that we need to, because it's not great, it's very simple.
I agree.
Let's go.
Can I just add one thing?
Please.
That we have to treat this like we treat our hair or our house. If we want to get it fixed, we have to trust the barber or beautician or the plumber or carpenter. And so we have to do a particular examine. That is, we have to do an examination to determine whether or not what we're looking at, whether it is a physician or a hospital or our own personal doctor, whether that person is competent. Do we have faith in what they give us? Or are they just going by, oh, you have a headache? Well, the book says you should take two
Mm-hmm.
aspirins and
Right.
call me. Or the book says you should take Tylenol. Or
Mm-hmm.
are they serious about your health care? Um, do they spend time with you? Do they
Mm-hmm.
just run in there and look at you? You spend more time with the nurse than the doctor?
Mm-hmm.
May need to consider either saying to them, I need more time with you,
Mm-hmm.
or I need to find someone else. Because we, regardless of what your genetic makeup is, regardless of your epigenetics, if you are using, uh, I guess the wrong word is wrong, but let me use that word. If you're using the wrong healthcare system,
Mm-hmm.
then you can't get the right health.
Ooh.
Yeah. And what y'all saying, makes so much sense to me. Um, but now we got. I know another thing. We got people close to me. I can tell them this or that, and they would not. They don't care. They won't listen to it. Then they go and get that same information from somebody outside of who really care for them. From a doctor or teacher or whatever. They take heed to it. Um, design is, I don't know, but how 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 do we just, how do we get
That's
our
good.
people to really um take heed or just acknowledge the healing cycle from an African perspective?
You know, brother, sometimes white ice is colder. You know I
Yeah.
don't mean that.
Nah, it's a white ice. It's colder sometimes. Ice.
I,
Yeah.
I, I know what you're saying. You know,
Yeah.
I've experienced the same thing myself. You'll make a recommendation or tell somebody something, and they act like they didn't hear you.
Yeah.
And then the right person tell them, and then they said, oh, I was thinking I should do so and so.
Yeah.
But again, the conditioning.
It's true.
Right.
We have been conditioned to not believe in ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
We have been conditioned to believe in the oppressor.
That's true.
And in the cycle of healing, what we talk about is when you're in the ma'afa, when you're in the misery of miseries, or when you're in the small misery, that there is healing.
Right.
True.
There is a balm in Gilead,
Come on.
a balm to make the wounded whole, a balm to heal the sin sick soul. I do like that.
Yeah.
So the point is that because Gilead is our ancestors, and our ancestors are us when we have self-knowledge, that we can go back and get it. We can do Sankofa. You go back. See, the problem that we have today is not a problem that's not been had before.
Before, right.
And how did you survive? How did you overcome? How did you make a way out of no way? These are words of reality. Sometimes you just have to be still and listen, and the ancestors will come. Excuse me, will come. And sometimes you have to. I believe in the dream state that the ancestors will come to you and talk to you,
Yes.
and if you would but accept them,
Mm-hmm.
because if you reject them, they're gone. See you.
Right.
But the point is that we have within us the self-knowledge, and if we bring that out, we can solve many of our problems. So the cycle of healing says if you're in the ma'afa, if you're in the misery, go back, talk to your elders, talk to the family, talk to yourself. Look at the history of how you solve the problems. There used to be a community, and I can't remember the name of it, forgive me. This age thing is wonderful. It's better than the alternative. Anyway,
Definitely.
a community where if someone was sick, they would take the person to the center of town. And everybody in town was required to come and look at the person to determine if they could do an evaluation of what they had and what the cure was. You see, that's communal healing. You see,
Right.
we need to reach out and communally heal ourselves.
Yes.
But you can't communally heal yourself if you lock yourself in your apartment, you lock yourself in your house, you don't know your neighbors. Now, some of our neighbors we don't.
You want to
I
I
ain't
don't
gonna
know,
say
right?
that. Sister, you know I would. You can skip a few, but the point is that if we are a collective, and it doesn't mean the person that has to be across the street, but you need some elders in your life so that you can say,
Yes.
well, what did you do when the oppressor was oppressing you like they're oppressing you now?
Yeah.
What did you do? How did y'all manage?
That's
You know, were you organized? How do you organize to disorganize the organized?
Come on.
You know, how do you collectively save your children?
That's right.
How do you collectively get healthy? How do you collectively say to people that you cannot treat us this way?
That's right.
When I used to live in Delaware, and a brother that worked with me said in his town in southern Delaware that the police, before they could come and get somebody, had to come to the elders and get permission. You see? You know,
We need
because
that.
that was the requirement in that
Yeah.
community.
Come on, we
You know,
need
you coming to
that.
get somebody, you better stop by here and
Right.
get permission.
Permission.
You know,
Right.
you see, we forget that we had things like that. We forget that we built towns. We forget. I mean, we talk about Tulsa all the time, but Tulsa is just a small one. We talk about Wilmington. We talk about Durham. We talk about all the businesses that we built. So we have, again, to go back to what I talked about earlier, we have healing.
Yeah.
If we would access that healing, if we would support that healing. But the bottom line is that Sankofa says if you come back to get it, then you have to take it forward and use it.
Right.
Because just like if someone comes to you for knowledge and they ignores you, that's not Sankofa. I don't call people names, you know, but you know it's not the brightest thing in the world to just ignore good advice.
Right.
You know,
Right.
and if you don't know it's good advice, ask and say something. Say,
That's
well,
right.
you know, you told me so and so, but I don't believe that. Okay, well, why don't you believe it? Let's have a dialogue. Let's engage each other. You know, but the worst thing for me, for anybody, is to ignore you.
Right.
You know. Just say I don't believe you and I'm not going to follow you. People say that to me all the time. No, they don't say that to me.
That's what I'm
You know,
Who is that fool?
I was
What fool
just trying
is
to be-
that?
I was just trying to be
That's so
humble. It didn't work, did it?
No, it was
No,
funny.
but you know, you don't have to believe anybody. You can always verify what
Yeah.
people say. Do some work.
That's
You
right.
Right.
know, if it's
right.
important to you, read.
Research
I
your
mean,
own.
everybody who has a problem, they're usually not the first person to have that problem.
Right.
It's true.
You know,
It's true.
and there are always people that you can reach out to.
Right.
You know,
Right.
I'm gonna give you their numbers later.
Yeah. All right.
No.
I'm waiting on them.
That's powerful.
But
Absolutely.
yeah, and I don't want to sound like a broken record, but it'd be points that really need to be reiterated. You know, just for listening audiences and for myself too. You were mentioning earlier, you know, you're like, you know, we speak about consciousness, spirituality, healing processes and all, getting back with our ancestors. You were mentioning earlier about, you know, how they call it hoodoo or voodoo, maybe. I'll throw something else in. Sometimes they throw black magic out there. You know, they make it sound like such a
Primitive or devilish type of approach to spirituality.
there you go. Right. If y'all will, you know, just briefly, just touch up, reiterate some points so that people can understand that this type of healing, African traditional healing is, you know, sometimes more necessary than
Let me say
Modern
this,
medicine.
that the so-called modern medical organizations are in Africa looking for our traditional healings. They are
Yeah.
in South America looking for the traditional healings
Yeah.
so that they
Mexico.
can package them in a pill and sell them to you, and you can say, "Oh, this is a miracle drug." You know, one year I was in Africa walking across the field with the guy who was our tour leader, and I said, "Well, what do you do for pain?" And he stopped, bent down, and picked something up. He said,
Ooh.
"We take this and we rub it across our forehead." Another time, I was in Ghana, and he was talking about people who were escaping from captivity.
Yeah.
And he said, "You see this plant right here? When anybody steps on that plant, plant curls up, so we can tell whether they're coming this way or not." You see, so what I'm saying is, one last thing. When I was a child, and you had an injury, like I stepped on a nail,
Yes.
and they cut a potato and wrapped my foot so the potato would draw out
Yeah,
the poison.
poison.
Now, I'm not saying do that today. You can go to the hospital, but we didn't have any money, and there wasn't any hospital to go to. But what I am saying, that there are both natural and historic paths to healing. That is what Sankofa is as well.
That's right.
That if you're going back to get it, that you can get the Ma'afa, you can get truth, justice, righteousness, and balance
That's
in your
good.
life.
That's right.
If you would but use some of the traditional remedies. And if you ignore the negativity about who you are and accept that you are the progenitors of life on this planet, and that those progenitors have used healing methods much longer than there have been these so-called scientific methods.
That's it. You know, Baba, I'm going to take you back to a statement you said when you talked about communal healing. And for me, community is everything. Because, you know, if we broke down the word community itself, is communication and unity. And everyone is valuable in that community.
Right.
But what I will say is that the opposite of when you said we can't have these things and the communal healing, one of the things we definitely can't have if we're looking for communal healing is capitalism. Because capitalism says, I will watch you die in my community if you don't have $1. Or I'll give you the generic brand when you really should have the more potent
Right.
brand. I mean, it's all subjective, and you're only as good as what you can bring to the table. And it doesn't help if we've robbed you from being able to come to the table to even live. So, you know, look at this westernized society of religious beliefs. That in itself is a religious belief that transcends medicine, that transcends, it's in your education, everything that you do. It's a survival form of life. And survivors is more for, can I use the word beast in the field? It's a beast-like model. The dog-eat-dog world, or when you look at Wall Street, it's the bear and the bull. It's always something that has something to do with anything anti-human. Those are most of the characteristics of this westernized spirituality that seeps its belief into everything that we do. And we certainly have to reverse the curse.
Yes.
I like that. Reverse the curse.
Reverse the curse.
Brother, so you want to add anything before
Yes.
you know it's that time of the day?
Well, I would like to, thank, my Jegna, Baba Ahmose,
Yes.
for coming and sharing his knowledge, wisdom with us.
Yes.
And also like to thank, the listening audience.
Yes.
I think the information, that we're pushing out, is beneficial to us. I also like to thank, Dr.
Absolutely.
Kim, one of our co-hosts, brother, and of course yourself.
Yes. Absolutely.
So, anybody else want to say anything? Yeah, I'm gonna close out. I hate this time of day, and it makes me doggone. I don't even know. I don't even ever know how to do it.
Right.
Thank
Yeah.
you, Baba.
Oh my God. Yes.
Thank you.
Woohoo.
What I have here.
Get the book. It's
Yes.
available where, Baba, for the
Please.
listening audience.
Do what?
How do the listening audience obtain this great knowledge in this book that you've packaged?
I'm not selling books. I'm just
I
giving
didn't. How do you? How tell us how we can reach you to get? I didn't say sell it. I said how do we reach you to get the book?
I appreciate the offer. These were brought just to appreciate the fact that you, now, sister, you know how you get those sister faces? Anyway,
What-
thank you so much for allowing me to come, and I hope whatever I said, I want you to know it was the best I could do at the moment, and I appreciate you being willing to listen.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Thank
Yes.
you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
what I have here is ancestrals' voices speaking perfect love. Loving is a healing cycle. The words of Ahmose by Elijah Mickel. I had to plug that in. I know he wanted.
Yes.
But to close out, today, healing is not just therapy, it's remembrance.
Come on.
When we reconnect with nature, with ritual, with our ancestors, we are teaching our genes a new song, one of balance, harmony, and divine order. What we've learned today is that the language of our DNA is sacred. It carries the memory of our ancestors, the lessons of our struggle, the promise of our future. Epigenetics teaches us that we are not trapped by our history. We have the power to rewrite it. Every thought, every choice, every act of love sends healing through generations. When we live by truth and divine order, when we know ourselves, that's a part of the healing cycle. This has been Africans United, Know Thyself Black Power Radio with the Honorable Brother Asar, Dr. Kim, and our brilliant special guest, Baba Ahmose. Until next time, stay conscious, stay rooted, and stay divine. Remember, proper education always corrects error. Peace.
Peace.
Booming from Linwood, this is WRLYLP Raleigh.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to A New Direction. My name's Jay Izzo, and we have an